Hi everybody, thank you for joining us today for the Iberian Spotlight video. I'm here with Ben, who is our analyst for the Iberian Peninsula. Nice to see you, Ben.
Nice to see you, Will.
So, Ben, it'd be good to start with just hearing a bit about the market, what's been going on, and the history.
Yeah, absolutely. So today is going to be a bit of a reflection on the recent report we released, which covers sort of the main hub of activity and what's been happening across the peninsula. And really the objective today is just going to be us examining what's happening, some relevant different developments, not only just in the heart of Madrid, but what's happening elsewhere across the region and what might happen in the future. If we're going to put it in one sort of punchline, one sentence, what's happening, I think is happening everywhere. Growth is a huge thing, and I know that's probably a bit tired to hear, but the relevant punchline I would give you is that the live supply in this region is set to more than quadruple in what is planned currently, which I think is staggering, especially when you consider that within the past 10 years, the supply in this region has only grown by about 100 megawatts. So if you want to give that 10 megawatts a year roughly, then that's not that impressive to someone in a much more developed market.
So Ben, the question is what's driving this?
I mean, there's some people will tell you different things. So some people might say that it was the promotion of both their take-up and also their own facilities, so this being hyperscalers, so including people like AWS, people like Microsoft, Meta announcing their facility sort of west of the Madrid area. But equally, I think what's driving this growth is we're realizing that these really saturated markets, obviously the FLAP or FLAP-D markets, are really facing problems with things like land constraints, as well as struggles accessing power or having enough power at all. And I think Iberia is moving in a direction which is actually really different from these. So not only do you have comparatively cheaper land prices, albeit maybe central Madrid, you're looking at slightly more equal pricing, but especially when you start to look away from that, it really does drop. But moreover, because of the way that power is becoming much greener in that region, it's meaning that people are able to make larger and larger developments for much less cost than you are in somewhere like London or Amsterdam.
Okay, so you mentioned some constraints in other markets. So is Iberia suffering from these as well, or is it fared relatively better?
So power constraints absolutely are a problem, especially if you want to look at Madrid. I think if you go into somewhere like the core of Madrid, originally we talked about these areas like Silicon Alley, or they say in Spanish, San Blas Canillejas. These are areas that absolutely were very much the core of activity a few years ago, but now that people are starting to realize how constrained these kind of developments are by the power constraints in the Madrid area, people are starting to move further and further away. A prime example of that would be AWS choosing to go somewhere like Aragon. So Aragon is a region northeast of the Madrid area, and it really does not have a huge tech presence. It's not renowned for being a tech hub. It's not anything like the Madrid market has at all. But in these areas, you are able to build out these larger solar farms as AWS has and tap into local green energy production that is happening across a lot of the region now, which has ultimately meant they've been able to develop larger, and they're currently, by megawattage, by live megawatts, I should say, the largest player in Iberia.
And I understand that Microsoft actually have recently made an announcement about a scheme in this area.
Absolutely. So they have not only already got several developments east of the Madrid area, and sort of southeast east, but they're also developing another one in the metropolitan Madrid area as well. So they're going to total 4 now. And you have people also like Meta just west of the area that announced in Talavera de la Reina as well. So it is definitely somewhere that's taking off for sure.
And so we briefly discussed that location and also Madrid. What are the other main markets for this region?
So you do have, I would preface it by saying that I don't think we have yet a market that can really rival Madrid. I think we have areas like Barcelona, for example, that are definitely strong competitors, but more so across Iberia right now, you kind of have, I'll say, these notable exceptions. So you have Start Campus, who are developing a 495 megawatt facility in Sines, which is south of the Lisbon area in southern Portugal. Or you have, for example, Merlin Properties, who are developing around 100 megawatt campus northeast of Lisbon. So, but I still would hesitate to say that Lisbon is a hub or a major cluster, I think these are more outliers rather than the norm yet. But I think with something like that Start Campus development, we could really expect to see more activity in these lesser known, I'll say, places in the data center market.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right.
Absolutely. But I think right now it'd be good to actually take a little dive into what we're seeing. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the kind of stuff that we're seeing across Iberia right now. So for anyone that hasn't used our platform before, this is the market analytics page that we have for the Iberian Peninsula. And so you can see these wheels over here. So this first wheel we have live. Under construction means the facilities in being fitted out phase, if you will. Committed means that they have all the components ready. So these can be things like building permits or energy supply. And they usually move forward with demand. And then early stage usually means that they are missing one of those, if not multiple components to progress forward with development, but they have announced a plan.
So there seems to be quite a lot of early stage power. Is that typical for markets across Europe, or is that quite high?
It's quite high. So when we look at the average market development for other regions in Europe, they are typically usually sitting within, honestly, especially if you want to talk about somewhere like ben.hood, for example, which we can dive into a little bit later. They are someone that has a majority of their supply sitting in live, with some construction and the majority in committed. Early stage is something that we usually don't see as much coming out in this size. But what we're having right now across Iberia is people saying, I want in, I want to do this, I want to do that, I really want to tap into this, because of the excitement and buzz that's happening across the region. So that is part of the reason why we have such a high number here in the region. The problem that we have is the changing power situation. So in Portugal and Spain, both countries have passed legislation within the past few years, which means that each country needs to be reaching certain renewable goals by first 2030. I believe in Spain it's 74% total energy has to come from renewables by 2030. In Portugal, they want to reach about, for 2026 now actually, they want to reach further about 80%. And
so quite ambitious.
Very ambitious. But Portugal in January this year reported that they managed to produce 88% of their electricity from renewable sources. So it is something that we are seeing is changing how much people can do right now.
Yeah.
But with people like AWS in the region of Aragon, they're not only tapping into local solar power sources, but they're also developing their own.
Yeah.
So it is definitely something we're seeing moving forward. People like Iron Mountain are doing the same, 100% renewables. And it is, I think, definitely influencing how much we can do right now. But I think once that infrastructure is there and developed further, we'll see that start to move into committed under construction, for sure.
Two other things that seem notable to me is the vacancy rate seems a higher percentage than most markets. And also just knowing Madrid from quite a few years ago, it was also quite a big self-build market.
Absolutely.
So the co-location seems to have developed quite significantly.
Absolutely. So with the vacancy market right now, this is something that not only have I spoken about with my contacts, but also with our consultant in the London office, is that we are starting to see a small drop in the sort of deal take-up activity, again, because we have such a large, I'll say, future pipeline. A lot of the contacts that we have in Iberia are currently working on deals. They're working on developing, they're expanding out. And so ultimately the vacancy rate has been a bit higher than the European average, absolutely. But in regards to the market composition, it has shifted a lot. About 10 years ago, we were at roughly a 50-50 split. And now, obviously, as you can see here, it's over 80% dominated by co-location.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a market shift that we've seen. That's not to say there aren't self-builds. And I think, as we've discussed, as we see more of these hyperscalers coming in, that'll shift a bit more backwards. I think coal is definitely still in the majority right now, for sure.
Great.
But I think right now as well, a good little look would be to scroll down here to our map view. So we were talking earlier about these clusters. So obviously if we want to scroll in a little bit here, we can see the Madrid area. So this is largely obviously where we see the majority of Spanish data center activity. However, what we're starting to see originally, as we talked about earlier, we had this Silicon Alley cluster, which is where the cursor is here. Now what we have is, as operators are starting to see not only the constraints of power, but the cost of land in that area, so central, we're seeing people start to move further and further out. So for example, over here in Meco, this is Microsoft. Other clusters that we have are up here in Tres Cantos, over in Alcalá de Henares. We have multiple people like Iron Mountain, as well as others moving into the central area for sure. So if we want to move a little further out, Will, we can actually see that not only are people starting to move further out of Madrid, but we're actually seeing a pickup in activity happening across Iberia in more remote areas.
So one thing that I noticed, a lot of the data centers seem to be on coastal locations.
Absolutely. So this is bolstered by sort of two main factors that are really starting to amp up in Iberia. So first of all, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a big uptake in renewable energy sources. So wind power is coming in alongside solar power. And obviously this is advantageous in the coastal region. But moreover, Iberia is home to around 30 major cable landing networks. And also what we have is a major increase upon over 10,000 kilometers of cable networks that have since joined into this region. And these connect with not only the Americas, but also Asia as well as Africa. So this is why Iberia is becoming this coveted little connectivity region, this little doorway to Europe, if you will, that a lot of people are realizing now will cost them far less to tap into than trying to send something from, I don't know, the Netherlands, for example.
Yeah. That's really interesting. It's clearly an exciting market at the moment. Have you got sort of any closing points you wanted to mention? Or?
I think, honestly, looking forward, the way that I can expect this to ultimately, I guess, behave is really starting to see a diversification of the area. I think what we have in a lot of EMEA is really kind of homogenous markets where people hear Madrid and they're like, okay, that's Iberia, that's where I need to be, that's all I need, that's all I want. But when I think we see some of these really big developments, I'm really excited about, for example, Start Campus. I think that's going to be a major boon for the Portuguese data center market, for example. And we'll be able to see how people actually start to tap into all these really new and useful networks that are very unique for Europe.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you, Will.